Hello everyone, I hope you're taking it easy and your day has been great thus far. For this video we'll be going through an unboxing and review of the Studio Series Gamer Edition Deluxe Barricade. And Barricade is the second release of the Gamer Edition line. And this version of Barricade is from the Transformers War for Cybertron game from many moons ago. Not as a weird reference to High Moon, but it is what it is. Barricade was released this year being 2023, so he's actually only been out probably a few weeks. Maybe a bit longer, depending where you are on various parts of the globe. But yes, I've only had Barricade. In fact, I've only had the first 3 Studio Series Gamer Edition figures a little while now. So Bumblebee was done last week. This week we're looking at Barricade, and next week have a look at Optimus, which should then hopefully align to Megatron and Cliffjumper coming out. Anyway, enough of that. On to the box. So front of the box, still sporting very typical Studio Series like qualities. Have a nice image of Barricade here. Barricade, his figure, obviously visible through the box. Also feels like they've actually shrunk the actual window down now. I felt it was a little bit bigger previously. Otherwise, there are some minor changes to the packaging to accommodate for this Gamer Edition line. Side of the box, other side of the box. In terms of the back, Barricade in his robot mode, Barricade in his vehicle mode, with his weapon attached, and similar to what I said with Bumblebee, it actually looks okay. I don't mind it. It's all good. 15 steps of conversion doesn't actually seem like a lot, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And being a Studio Series, we do get a backdrop included, and it looks like the theme of the backdrop will be Dark Energon. I'm really going to want to play this game again if I keep doing these unboxings. In terms of the small blurb, Barricade assists in a mission to locate an ancient power called Dark Energon. The game was definitely very fun in the end. I'm trying to remember if I ever finished it. I don't think I did, unsurprisingly. Anyway, that was the box and me being somewhat violent. Time to open up the box, get Barricade out, have a better look at Barricade, his accessories, which I suspect is just the one, have a quick look at his Dark Energon background, and take it from there. And with Barricade out of his packaging, what do we have? We do have a single accessory, when I'm not throwing it around the place. We have one Barricade, and I have double checked to make sure that he's relatively transformed. And I think he is. We have the manual, and off screen right now is his backdrop. So if I just make a touch of space. So the backdrop, Dark Energon, quote unquote. I will admit, I definitely loved the environment design for the game. It was very nice to see Cybertron when the game came out. In terms of Barricade in his display backdrop, it's a bit of a quick look. Barricade actually seems somewhat larger than I expected. He does have a bit of a silhouette about him, but I'll save that for the right time. But definitely not too bad looking. I'll definitely have to try and get some better pictures with Barricade and the backdrop. But that's the backdrop that's included. It is very nice that I'm hoping we get different scenery and locale of Cybertron with these releases, as opposed to what we saw with Transformers Bumblebee. Basically saw like 2, maybe 3 backdrops just recycled over and over and over again. So Barricade, I'll just leave you there for a moment. Instruction manual. So it was very nice of them just to have a few quick steps on how to appropriately put him into robot mode. based on how he was packaged in his box. We do have the steps regarding his weapon, so similar to Bumblebee, it will be a detach lower part of the arm. I suspect it will just be one of the arms, and then attach his weapon. Weapon can also store on his back as well when he's using both his arms. Transformation process, so it will start with some flipping of the legs or feet and turning a few things around. Doesn't look too complicated so far, especially given this is only 15 steps. And going through transformation. His transformation, for some reason, loosely reminds me of Transformers Prime Wheeljack. I don't know why. Maybe it's just me. I'm going to be a bit on the fence about that giant piece of back piece that he has, but once again, I'll save that. 15 steps later, we have his vehicle mode, and we do have one little instruction on how to attach his weapon, which I suspect is using that little port that I tried to use on his back. To little to no success. So that was the manual. We'll come back to that. Quick look at his accessory, which I think is supposed to be this way up. So, just all in black, no extra colors, which is unfortunate, but it does have a little bit of detailing on it, which is very nice. Now, before I get too carried away, this apparently attaches to the back of Barricade. So there's a nice little attachment point there, with a nice little tab on the side of the weapon, and will tab in quite nicely there. Definitely not too bad. And it does look relatively out of the way as well, so that is always a good thing. Now we will untab that. More to the point, try to untab that. Okay, how difficult? Not very. So there's Barricade's arm detached, and put it on there, and there you go. Barricade equipped with his weapon. Now I'm definitely not going to try and see if his other arm does it. I suspect, similar to Bumblebee, it's just been designed for the one arm to do it. It actually does look a lot better with the actual weapon there. But that does look very cool. Definitely an interesting gimmick and way of doing the actual weapon equipment compared to how we're used to things before, but it's definitely not too bad. Now do be careful about how much force you exert on that, because you may accidentally pop it off unintentionally during some movement. Be interesting to see what type of articulation we have and if there's difference in articulation when it is and isn't equipped. So that was the main weapon. We will see that again when we hit Barricade's vehicle mode. Now, let's see if I can reattach his arm. Have I done some type of tomfoolery and done something weird? Okay. Barricade. Now, I've got a few thoughts already, but let's keep them for later on. So, Barricade. Barricade from the very front, the side, the back. I will admit, it's a very interesting way of making the kibble look nice. The other side, and then a bit of a close-up of the head, the upper body as well. Very nice to have that Decepticon emblem emblazoned on his chest. Now, in terms of colours for Barricade, so we've definitely got probably two tones of grey, a lighter and a darker, and we definitely have a very nice matte black coming through. The purple bits, mainly on the torso and the back, are a very nice addition. Very nice way of adding in some colour. We do have a little bit of silver here as well, and on the head we do have a touch of yellow for his eyes. So visually, I'm definitely liking what they've done for Barricade. Visually. And I do feel from a visual perspective, it does have a nice representation back to Barricade. Now, articulation. Now, this is going to be very interesting. But actually, before we get to articulation, so he does have a little bit of kibble. There's a little bit on the back of the legs, which it's kind of forgiving. There's been worse. He does have a bit of side skirting, which, once again, it's kind of forgiving. I'm just wondering if it actually does any form of tabbing in. It does a little bit. It's not too bad, but it's definitely noticeable. And then the main culprit is obviously this back shell of a piece, which, to my earlier comment, is a very interesting way of describing. What was I going to say? What was I going to say? Describing, not describing. Hiding the kibble in plain sight. Now, one thing I've noticed. So Barricade has what looks like a little tab port here and some possible tabbing here. Now, for the life of me, I've tried to actually tab that bit in. It just doesn't really want to seem to tab in properly. So, if Bumblebee was any indication, probably because I'm doing something completely and blatantly wrong. But it would be nice to actually try and tab that in, because I would think it makes things a bit more secure. But anyway, with that out of the way. So, kibble. It's not terrible, it's not great. Articulation, and I think articulation is going to be a bit of a, I don't want to say a letdown. I think it's going to be less than average. So, Barricade's head does have a bit of up and down tilt, and I'm having the hardest time trying to see if it has any rotation. I don't think it does. I'm just going to move that kibble there. Okay, it does rotate, but do be careful. I actually felt that. I was a bit worried that I could actually potentially snap his neck. So Barricade's head will do a full 360, which does mean that you can obviously go side to side. Just be very careful. That was a very stiff joint, and I don't think I've done any damage by doing that, but boy, the amount of force you had to apply, it did make me start to feel, was I going to accidentally shear the head off? But there you go. In terms of the arm, so once again, I'm just going to get that back bit out of the way. So the arm will be able to do a 360. It will only go far out that much to the side. Obviously, because it can do a 360, it can go front and back. There's rotation here at what I suspect is the upper elbow. But this is a very interesting thing. So the actual elbow bend itself is not the traditional sense of where it should be. It's actually more side to side. Now, because of the side skirting, some of the general sizing of his arm, that could be considered very weird. Now, I'm just wondering, now if his arm was like that, it wouldn't be so bad. I'm just actually having a look at the instruction manual, which is still to the side of me. So if his arm was like that, it's probably not as bad. You will regain the actual elbow there. So just putting them side by side. So this is how pretty much the arm was literally straight out of the packaging, which, firstly, will you actually stand even though your back bit is, yeah. So the good news is you will stand. Now, I'm actually going to bring back the manual. Now, the manual actually does suggest the arms should actually be like that. So if we do that on both sides. So if we do that, then yes, you will regain the use of the elbow joint, which is good. So he doesn't look as clunky now. The actual arms themselves, like the forearm bit, does feel a little bit clunky, but that's okay. A little bit dubious about the actual look of the hands and the this other, you know, cuff section, where they're located next to each other, but it's not terrible. But yes, there you go. So there you have it. If you want a bit more articulation with the arms, just make sure that you flip the arms around so you can actually regain that elbow. And when you do regain that elbow, you know, you do get a little bit of, I mean, you get almost a 90-degree bend there, and you do get a little bit of a bend backwards as well. And as I mentioned earlier, there is the rotation there. And I guess it does in a way help that the actual hands will be on a ball socket, so they can move a little bit to try and accommodate. Now, thankfully, when you're not also pulling off the arm as well, because Barricade has the whole gimmick of his arm becomes his weapon, the hand holding is fairly minor in this particular situation. Now, I will admit some of the kibbling and stuff like that will start to annoy me, but it is what it is. We do have some waist rotation. In fact, it's full 360, and I do believe that's also part of the transformation. Speaking of which, I will put the manual back to the side. So there'll definitely be some nice movement here in the waist. In terms of the legs, no full splits, not exactly unsurprising. Not even a full leg kick out, to be honest. But you do get a decent kick back, so that's definitely not too bad. But the forward, a little bit encumbered, and the side is definitely encumbered, the back not so much, and I think that's just because of some of the components of his upper legs. We do have a knee bend. It's not terribly fantastic, but it is definitely there, which is good. And in terms of his feet, they do go up and down, as we saw from the manual, mainly because of transformation. So there's a little bit of movement there. There will be a little bit of rotation here in the hip joint as well. Well, the bottom of the hip, and I think there might even be a small smidge within that hip socket itself. So even though the knee bend is not terribly great, you will be able to get some nice swivel out of that hip area, so that will hopefully help accommodate some dynamic poses. So now that we also changed the orientation of his arms, will you still stand on your own 2 feet? The answer is yes, but I'm not fully convinced, but that's okay. When I do shorts, I'll definitely become a bit more convinced. I feel like it would be nice if these little back panels actually tabbed into something. I think that's why it feels a little bit weird, because while they hug the body relatively okay, they don't actually tab in to the actual back of the legs. So yeah, it doesn't feel as secure as it could be. Anyway, Barricade, robot mode. That was a bit longer than I was expecting. Hopefully your 15 steps transformation isn't. So I'm going to transform you now that we've had a look at your robot mode, and I'm not completely disappointed. But for a Deluxe Studio class, I feel that the bar has potentially been missed. Regardless, I'll be doing some final thoughts at the end of the video anyway, so I'll save stuff for then. Barricade, time to transform you. Hopefully this won't take too long, then we can have a better look at your alt mode. And Barricade now in your vehicle mode. Now the good news is, compared to transforming Bumblebee, who had that very, very, very precise locking of the waist, otherwise you couldn't do anything thereafter. Barricade was a lot easier to transform. Yes, you only had the 15 steps, but they did feel a lot more intuitive, fluidic, and everything does tab quite nicely. There wasn't the need to have any real surgical precision on anything. Did it maybe feel a bit too simplified? I want to lean towards yes. It's not a full yes, but if it was on a sliding scale, it'd be leaning towards the yes side compared to the no side. But after transforming Bumblebee, it was definitely a nice relief not having to spend 10 minutes to do that. Anyway, I have attached the weapon to the top of Barricade. So Barricade from the top down, and I will admit he does look very nice. From the bottom up, and once again he does actually look very nice. It's actually also very tidy, which is nice. So Barricade from the front, the side, the back, and I guess this is where that interesting kibble comes into play, and the other side. And I guess if we did it on a bit of a interesting little angle. Now in terms of the colors, we still have that grey coming through very nicely. We have the black still. We actually get a bit more of the purple now. So we still see some of the purple from the back that we saw earlier, but we're getting a bit of the purple now on the front. We get a bit more yellow. So before we just had the yellow on his eyes, but now we do have a little bit of yellow here on the rear of his vehicle mode. We do still have some of this silver. In fact, it's a little bit more prominent. But I do also like how we just have some of this, these very faint little purple lines here on the side of his, I don't know what to call that component. Obviously from a normal vehicle that would be where his windshield and stuff would be. But I do like that nice little bit of a purple trim about it. So overall, visually, I think Barricade definitely has a very pleasing alt mode. Like, I actually do like it. And even with the weapon attached, it's definitely not too bad. In fact, if I detach the weapon, it's in there very, very securely. I mean, that's obviously what Barricade looks like without the weapon attached. So either way, it actually doesn't look that bad. As I mentioned in previous videos, Cybertronian modes and attached weapons actually don't seem that bad at all. In terms of articulation, it's pretty much just going to be his four wheels. Now I know they're not exactly color accurate because I think there'll be a lot of this purple inside the actual wheels, which you can definitely still do. I would just recommend for anyone who's going to paint it, if you do paint the purple, maybe try and seal it just because of where the paint would be. So from a alt mode perspective, I really actually do like the look. It's very nice. It does look like it's got a bit of a thicker silhouette around it, but it definitely feels quite sturdy. The tabbing for everything tabbed in quite nicely. And going back to the transformation commentary I had earlier, everything actually did feel quite intuitive, to the point I pretty much stopped using the instructions about halfway through because it was starting to make a good degree of sense. So overall, I do quite like Barricade's alt mode. Similarly, its transformation wasn't too bad either. Okay, bringing back the manual. So I guess final thoughts on War for Cybertron Barricade. Let's start with the robot mode. He does feel a little bit visually clunky, robot mode wise, which is unfortunate. And I have a feeling it will become a lot more evident when I do the short for Barricade. The articulation I feel is a bit less than standard. The basic articulation is definitely there, so there's still enough to work with, but I feel if I was to compare Barricade to Bumblebee, I think Bumblebee was probably more at the typical standard level of articulation. Barricade, I feel, has a little bit less, or it isn't as some of the articulation arcs aren't as large as what we see in Bumblebee. So articulation, it feels a little bit of a sore point. The visual aesthetic, I mean, some of the clunkiness is definitely a bit of a sore point, but at the same time, he's also not too bad visually as well. The colors were actually very nice, but yeah, visually he will go either way of the spectrum, I think. At least that's what I thought for me. The included accessory does work quite well, and I'm actually hoping that might even provide a bit more range of articulation because it becomes a bit more of a smaller profile on the forearm. Time will tell. So overall, robot mode, I think it might be the weaker of the two modes. Definitely had potential. The colors I think definitely still work well for it, but I think there's just been a little bit of loss in the playability side. Transformation from robot mode to alt mode. Transformation, as I've mentioned, wasn't too bad. 15 steps. It does go by pretty quick. It's intuitive. The tabbing is very, very nice. And yeah, there's no real precision needed. Okay, the tabbing needs to go in the right spots, but compared to War for Cybertron Bumblebee, there's nothing super precise like that little waist component that Bumblebee has. So transformation, I quite enjoy. Was it a little bit too simple? Maybe a little bit, but that's okay. It's quite forgiving, and if you're flip-flopping between figures, sometimes it's a blessing. In terms of Barricade's alt mode, visually I do like the look of it. It does, from what I recall of the game, it does a very good job of being a solid representation of Barricade's alt mode. Visually it does look very nice. The colors are good, the general profile is good, the detailing, even attaching the weapon onto the top of Barricade, it actually just works quite well profile wise. So I would almost be inclined to leave Barricade in his alt mode. Time will tell, but for me personally, I find the alt mode to be stronger of the two. But once again, as I said, that's my perspective. Would I still recommend Barricade as a figure? I would still say yes. His robot mode wasn't completely terrible. There have been worse, e.g. mainline Deluxe Bumblebee. So overall, he's still a decent figure. And given that we are getting this, very specialized gamer edition of War for Cybertron, I think it would be a bit of a disservice to skip over him because the War for Cybertron line wasn't exactly full of robots after robots after robots. It was quite finite compared to other things. So I think grabbing Barricade would definitely be good for the collection. And it'll just come down to personal preferences as to, do you prefer his robot mode, do you prefer his alt mode? Time will tell, plus as more Decepticons come out, who knows, you might just remain consistent with every one of the robot mode for display purposes. But that's it, yeah. But overall, Barricade is still a solid pickup. I would still recommend him. Yeah, and from what I've done so far, I have quite enjoyed having a bit of a play around with Barricade, and I do still feel quite optimistic about when I do the shorts. Granted, by the time this video goes live, the shorts would have already been done, so it's just me thinking ahead chronologically at the point of recording. I'll leave the unboxing and review there for Barricade. I think I've covered enough. I'm sure there's probably a few things I've missed, but that might come out later on when I do my Instagram post and things like that. Thank you very much for watching this unboxing and review video of Studio Series Gamer Edition Deluxe Barricade. Feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the content. All of this does help support the channel, and I do greatly appreciate it. Extra content can also be found on my Instagram account, link is in the description below. It's also the same handle as the channel. And as I've mentioned a few times, there will be a supplementary short to follow through as well for Barricade. With that being said, stay safe and take care, and I will catch you all in a future video.